can't find the hole to get the key in, and praying that the phone doesn't stop ringing. And I get to the phone, and it's Joe Esposito.
That features the music of 7 performances that were recorded in mono in February of 1977. The month of October was of course entirely dedicated to Lisa Marie's book release, From Here to the Great Unknown.
Elvis Presley didn't die on that bathroom floor in 1977, and shocking new evidence could prove it. What really happened that fateful day? Was it all a cover-up? Theories of a wax dummy, shady FBI connections, and a secret life as Pastor Bob Joyce suggests that Elvis pulled off the ultimate disappearing act. Let us uncover the truth, because if Elvis didn't that day, what he did next might just change everything. The Elvis disappearance theory. Ever since that fateful August day back in 1977, when the world heard that Elvis Presley was gone, people have been scratching their heads. Was it really the end of the king? Or was there more going on behind the curtain? Today, we're diving into the twists and turns of this tangled mess. The infamous Elvis is alive theory that's had people squinting at blurry photos and questioning gravestones for decades. What if everything we knew was just a cover-up? The truth might be far stranger than we imagined. But not everyone bought that story. From day one, there were whispers. People said the details just didn't add up. How could a man who'd been the biggest rock star on the planet just die in his bathroom like any other regular Joe? Fans started to speculate. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he just wanted out. Fame was suffocating after all, and who wouldn't want a way to escape it? And from there, the conspiracy theories only grew. There were some oddities about the whole situation. His funeral, for instance. Folks reported that the casket was unusually heavy, way heavier than it should have been. Rumor has it that this was because it didn't even have a real body in it, but a wax dummy. People actually think the king pulled the ultimate disappearing act and left a fake in his place. On top of that, eagle-eyed fans noticed that the gravestone had his middle name spelled wrong. It was written as Aaron, when he actually spelled it Aaron. Was this just a careless mistake, or a clue left for those loyal fans willing to dig deeper? Then there were the sightings. There were plenty of those. People swore they'd seen him at gas stations, airports, even walking around Graceland. It wasn't just 1 or 2 sightings either. It was a flood. Buying a cheeseburger in some random diner, sitting quietly at the back of an airport lounge. The king supposedly couldn't stay away from his old haunts. It's almost like his fans willed him into existence. They just couldn't let go of the idea that he might still be out there, avoiding the spotlight. A lot of the staying power behind the Elvis is alive theory comes from the inconsistencies people keep pointing to. Like, why was there such a delay in releasing his full autopsy report? And why did some people claim the body in the casket didn't look quite like him? The skin looked waxy, some said. Not natural at all. These details might seem small, but they're exactly the kind of thing conspiracy theories love to feast on. A vague report here, a suspicious sighting there, and before you know it, people are convinced that he is out there somewhere, laughing at all of us from a beachside shack. And let's not forget the juiciest angle of all, the FBI. Some folks think he faked his death not just to escape fame, but because he was mixed up in something much bigger. According to this theory, he was actually working with the FBI. He'd supposedly gotten himself into some risky business, helping out the feds by gathering intel on criminal organizations. Apparently, the king got too close to some dangerous people, and disappearing was the only way to keep himself safe. Witness protection, but make it rock and roll. There are actual declassified FBI files that show he had a connection with federal agents back in the 1970s. He'd apparently volunteered to help fight the drug problem in America, and he even visited President Nixon to offer his services. So was he a secret informant, forced to fake his own when things got too hot? For some, it's a tantalizing idea, a man so patriotic he'd leave behind everything, even the stage, to serve his country. And then there's Pastor Bob Joyce. Ever heard of him? If you're deep into these conspiracies, you have. He's a pastor who's got a singing voice that sounds suspiciously like his, and, well, he kind of looks like him too. Some people are convinced Pastor Bob is the king in disguise, living a low-profile life while still singing, just in a different setting. The guy denies it, but what else is he supposed to say? Denying it just makes it more believable for the true believers. The sightings haven't stopped either. Decades later, people still claim to see him. One of the most famous instances happened in Kalamazoo, Michigan, where someone swore they saw him buying groceries. There's something oddly comforting about it. The idea that maybe the king didn't burn out, but just slipped into a simpler life. Maybe he's still out there, an older man now, wearing sunglasses and sideburns, trying to blend in while buying a gallon of milk. It's almost funny in a bittersweet way, the idea that a legend like him would end up in the mundane places we all go. Is there any truth to all of this? Who knows? But the fact that these theories have hung around for so long says something about his impact. People want him to still be out there. They want to believe that the music didn't stop. These theories are driven by a kind of hope, really, a desire to keep their idol alive in any way possible. And maybe that's why these stories refuse to just like he himself supposedly refused to. For those who believe, there's always another sighting, another piece of shaky evidence, another story to keep the dream alive. Next, let's look at the stories and sightings that have kept Elvis's memory alive. Anonymity in the spotlight. Now let's dig a little deeper into the sightings and the people who keep them alive. After all, these stories haven't just floated in the air for no reason. They've been nurtured, documented, and passed down like legends from one believer to the next. These sightings aren't just casual anecdotes. They've grown into a kind of folklore, and each story adds to the myth of Elvis living on. People have dedicated their lives to tracking these encounters, treating each sighting like a religious experience, a chance to glimpse the divine in the ordinary. Take, for instance, the countless tales of Elvis showing up at diners. You might be tempted to laugh it off. Why would one of the most famous men in history be grabbing a coffee at some roadside diner? But for some, that's precisely the point. If he wanted to disappear, where better to hide than in the mundane? The familiarity of an old-school diner, the clink of coffee cups, the chatter of locals. It's the last place you'd expect to find someone who spent most of his life in the spotlight. And yet, people insist they've seen him. There have even been reports of waitresses recognizing his voice or catching a glimpse of someone who looked just a little too much like the king to be a coincidence. Then there are the stories of him being seen at airports. Think about it. An airport is the ultimate liminal space, a place where people are constantly coming and going, where identities blur and anonymity is almost guaranteed. It's easy to imagine someone like him blending in, a figure in sunglasses and a hat, slipping through the crowd. Maybe it's wishful thinking, or maybe it's something more. Either way, these sightings add to the narrative that he managed to evade the public eye, trading the fame and frenzy for the quiet anonymity of the in-between places. It's not just sightings either. There are people who have made it their mission to prove he's still out there. Entire books have been written and documentaries filmed, each one dissecting the inconsistencies, the strange occurrences, and the possible motives. These people are true believers, dedicating their time and energy to gathering evidence, however flimsy it might be. And honestly, isn't that dedication kind of amazing? It's one thing to believe in a story, but it's another to chase it, to follow every lead, to refuse to let go even when the rest of the world has moved on. One of the more bizarre elements of the theory is the idea of a secret society, some underground network that helped him disappear and stay hidden. This is where things get really wild, with some claiming that the mafia might have been involved, either as a threat to him or as his protector. Apparently, he had gotten on the wrong side of some powerful people, and the only way to get out alive was to fake his and go into hiding. It's a theory with plenty of holes, but for those who believe, it explains why someone as famous as him could vanish without a trace. And what about Graceland? The idea that he might still be walking around his old home has a certain poetic charm. There are those who say they've seen him there, just as they remember him, moving through the halls as if nothing has changed. Maybe it's just the power of suggestion. After all, Graceland is steeped in his presence. Every room, every object, every piece of memorabilia serves as a reminder of who he was. It's easy to see how someone might convince themselves they've seen a glimpse of the man himself, still haunting the place he loved the most. Then there's the whole Bob Joyce angle. The theory that he reinvented himself as a pastor has a certain romanticism to it. The idea that he traded in the life of excess for something more meaningful. A quieter existence where he could still sing, but now for a higher purpose. Pastor Joyce has the voice, the look, and even some of the same gestures. He's denied the connection, of course, but that hasn't stopped people from believing. To some, it's the ultimate act of reinvention, the king of rock and roll transforming into a man of faith. And isn't that just the kind of dramatic twist he would love? These stories of diners, airports, hidden societies, and secret lives, they all add up to something larger. They're not just about him, they're about us, about our need for legends, about our unwillingness to let go of those we admire. There's something deeply human in our desire to keep the myth alive, to imagine that the story didn't end in tragedy, that maybe, just maybe, it kept going. For some, it's comforting to think that he found a way out, that he chose to step away from the stage and into a simpler life. For others, it's about the mystery, the thrill of the unknown, the possibility that anything could be true. And what if it was true? What if he really did fake his slip away and live out his days in peace? Would it change anything? Would it make the music any less powerful? The legacy any less enduring? Probably not. The legend of Elvis Presley isn't just about the man, it's about what he represented. He was the embodiment of a moment in time, a cultural shift, a voice that spoke to a generation. Whether he died in 1977 or lived on in secret, that legacy remains. He was more than just a music legend. He was a living, breathing symbol of an entire era. With his glittery outfits, charismatic swagger, and uncanny ability to make an entire audience swoon with just one hip shake, he captivated millions. But you know what they say? What goes up must come down. And his final years seemed to spiral down in a way no one really expected. He wasn't quite the flashy, larger-than-life rock star anymore. By then, he was more of a human drama unfolding in slow motion. His final concert on June 26, 1977, was a heartfelt yet agonizing farewell, an end to what had been a stormy, triumphant, and altogether bizarre ride. The king of rock and roll wasn't exactly running on the boundless energy that had made him famous back in his early days. In fact, he looked like a shadow of his former self, barely able to keep up with the demands of his own stage show. But one thing was undeniable. His voice, still booming and profound, could make an entire audience sit on the edge of their seats, even if his jumpsuit no longer hugged the lean figure of old. But before the decline, there was a remarkable comeback that proved Elvis still had more to give. The comeback that changed Las Vegas forever. Let's rewind a bit. Back to 1969. He had been pretty much boxed into these cookie-cutter Hollywood films for the better part of the 1960s, and people were losing interest. But then he pulled off a comeback at the International Hotel in Las Vegas. The king was back. He stepped out on that Vegas stage, not as the boyish heartthrob of the 1950s, but as a new, reinvented performer, wiser, more worldly, and ready to reclaim his throne. It was an iconic move. The Vegas comeback was a smash hit. He knew he had to stand out, so he threw away the typical and went for more raw energy, gyrations, and flair. The setlist was stacked with new songs like Suspicious Minds and In the Ghetto, blending in with his old hits, an instant crowd pleaser. He knew how to work a crowd, even when the critics wanted to write him off as a has-been. His shows had it all: music, drama, sweat, and that feeling that you were witnessing a once-in-a-lifetime spectacle. And Vegas loved it. He sold out night after night. But the funny thing about a comeback is that it isn't always easy to keep it going. Vegas gave him a new home, but it also gave him a new pattern, a cycle of glitz, heavy schedules, and long nights. And Vegas wasn't exactly the healthiest playground for a man already tempted by excess. Fast forward to 1973, and he had another trick up his sleeve. Aloha from Hawaii, a concert beamed across 40 countries. A TV event bigger than anything anyone had tried before. It was extravagant, gaudy, and oh so grand. It wasn't just a concert, it was a spectacle for the masses. People across continents tuned in to see him strut his stuff in a white jumpsuit emblazoned with an eagle, because subtlety wasn't exactly his strong suit. He did what he did best. He put on a show. He sang his heart out with songs like Burning Love, An American Trilogy, and My Way, pulling in ratings that shattered records, cementing that no matter how faded the golden years might have been, the king was still a worldwide phenomenon. Of course, behind that flashy eagle emblazoned suit, Things weren't all rock and roll glory. His performances masked a growing dependence on prescription drugs and mounting health problems. But at that moment, with millions watching, he was still the icon, the guy who could mesmerize an audience with a swagger and a smile. Then came 1977, the year of decline. It was almost heartbreaking. It wasn't just the weight gain or the tired eyes. It was the sense that the fire had turned into a flicker. Yet somehow he still dragged himself out there, touring across the United States until his final performance in Indianapolis. It was both painful and inspiring. He sang My Way like he was holding onto something only he could understand. You could see the effort it took, the strain, and yet there was something noble about it. He wasn't giving up. He was giving all he had, even if all wasn't what it used to be. And then, just like that, in August 1977, the world was hit with the news. He was dead at 42. Heart attack, they said, though everyone knew it was a lot messier than that. The king, with all his wealth, his fame, his influence, had succumbed to the very excesses that defined him. Prescription meds, long nights, an unhealthy lifestyle. They all came together like some tragic rock opera. But of course, this is the king we're talking about, and legends never really die, do they? Enter the Elvis is alive theories, because why let a little thing like ruin a good story? Sightings started cropping up like dandelions in a field. He at a diner, he at the airport, him buying a peanut butter and banana sandwich, you name it. People just couldn't let go, because how could someone like that just be gone? It's almost like we collectively refuse to close the book. The image of him hiding out somewhere, enjoying life away from the spotlight, is somehow more comforting than the truth of him succumbing to his own demons. The official story was that he died at his Graceland mansion, found collapsed in his bathroom, pronounced due to heart failure. But there were enough strange details to raise eyebrows. The bloated face, the cocktail of prescription drugs found in his system, the secrecy surrounding the investigation, all of it pointed to something more complicated than just a simple heart attack. People wanted answers. The inconsistencies led to a flurry of theories. Some claimed that he faked his own death to escape the pressures of fame. Maybe he had grown tired of the relentless schedule, the money-grubbing hangers-on, and the constant scrutiny. There were those who swore they saw him alive and well afterward, disguised in plain sight. Tabloids ran stories with blurry photographs of supposed sightings, while others claimed that he had gone into witness protection to escape some nefarious mafia connection. Each theory seemed more outlandish than the last, but that didn't stop people from believing them. After all, how could someone as larger than life as him so mundanely? For decades, fans have insisted that the king couldn't be dead. Some pointed out that the name on his gravestone, Elvis Aaron Presley, was spelled differently from his birth name, Elvis Aaron Presley. They saw this as proof that the real man was still out there, that the person buried in Graceland was someone else entirely. Others fixated on the inconsistencies in the autopsy report, insisting that details were purposefully left vague to obscure the truth. The desire to believe in a happy ending, a version of him alive, happy, and free, was stronger than any official narrative. He had always been under intense pressure. He became a star when he was young, and as his fame grew, so did the expectations. He wasn't just a musician, he was a cultural phenomenon. He had to be the icon, the swiveling hips, the boyish grin, the untouchable persona. There wasn't room for mistakes or vulnerability. And that pressure ate at him. His health began to deteriorate in the early 1970s. His dependence on prescription drugs grew. At first, it was just to manage pain and help him sleep. But soon enough, it became a crutch. He had a schedule to keep, and the pills kept him going. As his dependence worsened, the quality of his performances began to suffer. He went from being the energetic performer who electrified audiences to someone who struggled to get through his set list. Even as he fell apart, he kept touring, kept performing. The stage was the only place where he felt like himself, even if it was slowly eliminating him. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, certainly didn't help. Parker was notorious for pushing him beyond his limits, demanding more and more shows, regardless of the toll it took. Parker was all about the money, and he was his cash cow. He kept the performer on a relentless schedule, knowing full well the strain it placed on his health, And for his part, the star kept going. He didn't know how to stop. He was who he was, and quitting was never an option. What do you think? Was Elvis truly a victim of his own fame? Or could he have escaped his fate? Comment below like if you agree, and don't forget to subscribe for more.